Welcome to Thriving Your Love, a podcast where we will guide and help you improve your most precious relationships in life. This podcast is produced and hosted by certified emotionally focused therapist Claudio Vargas Silva, licensed marriage and family therapist, and Trisha Kim Walsh, also licensed marriage and family therapist. Welcome back, viewers and listeners, to Thriving Your Love with Trisha and Gladio. And we are really eager to present to you another topic that branches off from previous episode on avoiding toxic relationships. And it will be really interesting for us to be viewing the lens of the individual, the partner, or even sometimes the child that's receiving these behaviors that can feel controlling and possessive and even sometimes abusive. And we're going to dive deeper into understanding what's going on. We're going to unpack it. We're going to learn from it, and hopefully it's going to help you slow down these behaviors so we can also say, what do you do in these moments when you feel, I believe I am in a toxic relationship? And it can get really scary, Claudio. We were just talking about this earlier because it touches back into many memories of our childhood, and it really is attachment work, which we spend so much time in the therapy room talking with our clients about. So excited and so thankful, as always, for us to bring these topics because this is probably, I'd say, in the top 3 most common discussions I have with clients, individuals, as well as couples, and even families. So let's dive in, Claudio. And I'm eager to help our viewers, listeners, have a better understanding of what do we do when we're seeing what we see toxic, and how do we make sense of what's really going on here?
Yes, Trisha, thank you for introducing the theme so well. I want to acknowledge that this is like a continuation, as you said, because in our last episode, we focus on the person that sometimes becomes abusive, and we tried to understand what happens for that person, what happens in their childhood that they might not have felt loved or special. And it's hard for them now to feel special because, happened to them in their childhood was like a traumatic experience, and they become very hyper vigilant to not being loved in the present.
Yes.
So anything that happens might be a sign that they are not important, that they are not special, that they are not loved or wanted. And what happens is that they react, right? They become angry. Inside, we know there is a lot of pain. There is like that feeling, I don't deserve to be loved. I don't mean anything to this person. I'm not valued. And the person protests, and then that protest comes in a way sometimes that is too strong to the point of becoming abusive, and that's how it might turn into a toxic relationship. You also talked about controlling, Trisha, which happens when the person is so afraid of being abandoned and the person thinks internally actually that they don't deserve to be loved. Why someone would love me? My parents, my caretakers, no one loved me. I never felt wanted, important in my childhood. So they are again hyper vigilant to
Yes.
being abandoned. And then in that fear of being abandoned, they become very controlling to the point of stalking sometimes. And what we see is the pain that this person is suffering, and we acknowledge the pain. We acknowledge the difficult childhood because many times people, naming this person as an abuser, but no one knows what happened to this person, and they have so much fear of acknowledging who they are, what they do because of their low self-esteem.
Yes.
So they have a need to think that they are okay, that they are right. So it's very hard for them to look in the mirror, to see themselves. So this is why it's so important for us not to take a blaming stance. We
Yes.
want to understand. But what we want to do today is to focus the lens on the other person, the person who is suffering that, who is with this person who is insecure, and what happens for this person, right? How they got into this relationship, how they felt attracted. And Trisha, something that we see in our offices a lot are people that they are in repeated relationships that are abusive. So what happens to these people? Why they end up and they don't realize at the beginning? They become like surprised. Oh my goodness, this is happening again. How did I get into this? It seems like I married my father. What is happening here?
I'm laughing from experience, of being in a toxic relationship. So as I laugh, I want to say the obvious is it's painful. And I think sometimes in my own coping strategies, I reflect on the past. And I'm so thankful for the great resources that I received when I was in the exact same situations that you're describing, Claudia, which I have experience and also examples that I can speak to. But the laughter is really in the pain, is to say, how could I have allowed myself to do this? But you just said it a moment ago, is it comes to familiarity is of the past when we didn't feel often. There is a reminder in these relationships of, you remind me of like a parent, and let's be reminded. And I tell my clients this consistently, is even with all the flaws and the mistakes that a parent has made, our livelihood, our survival depends on our caretaker. So of course it makes sense that there is love and there's a desperation and a need to believe I am safe. I can trust my parent to make me safe throughout my childhood and adolescence. And often my clients don't realize how hard things were until they're out of the house for whatever reason, whether they now are a full grown adult and they're going to school, or they've decided to get out of the situation and now have a better awareness of, wow, I had no idea the kind of suffering and the kind of dysfunctional behaviors that were happening under the roof.
Thank you so much, Trisha, for sharing your experience. And I also want to share like something that happened in my first marriage is that I thought I am not a good person. I need to change. I need to become a better person. And if I become a better person, I will conquer the love of my wife. And she will be nice to me, because she's a good woman, but I'm not a good man.
Yes.
So I need to change. And then there was that effort to change and constant effort. And that was an obsession, an obsession to be the perfect person, a negative view of self, thinking that I'm not a good man. And the thing is, what you said, like it comes from childhood. If you are with a parent who is very punitive, very blaming, or if some traumas happen to you, because like in my case, that my mother with schizophrenia, and she had a psychotic break when I was 2 months old, and then my cousin took me in, and then I fell in love with his wife, and she was everything for me. She was my mother. But then, my dad took me back to home, and then he would bring me back to the other house. So a lot of losses. And then the child starts thinking, well, maybe, there's a problem with me that people don't want me. I am with them, and then all of a sudden I'm not with them anymore. But the thing is that we see how attachment is so important, because what we see is that the child needs the parent. So the parent, if we think, Trisha, the parent doesn't need the child, right? The parent is self-sufficient.
Right.
The parent can
That's right.
live without the child. And we see that the reason that parents stay with their children is the need to care. Like we have something inside of us, in our attachment, that we want to care. We love to care. So this is why parents stay with their children, because they want to take care of their children. But they're self-sufficient. They could be without their children, but the children need to be with them. The children cannot be without a parent. So what does our brain do, right, to make us stick to the parent? And for us, children to stick to the parents, one of the things that happen is that if we suffer abuse from the parent, we will think that the parent is right and we deserve it. What we see is that low self-esteem
Mm.
is in some way a survival thing.
Yes.
So we
Yes.
think that we are bad and we deserve that, so that we stick to that parent who might be abusing us. But what happens is that one thing, if we think that we are bad, we think that the parent is good. In other words,
Right.
you are right in punishing me. You are doing the right thing because I am a bad. And for me to be good, I need to be punished. And this is why this child might become also in the future abusive, because they are buying into
Mm.
this belief that the other is bad, right? If the child does something wrong, they are not innocent, bad, they are malicious, they are doing that, and they are doing that maybe even to provoke me, to hurt me, and I have to punish this child. But then it becomes an obsession now of the child to become good, to become perfect, and trying to conquer the love of that parent. So we see like how nature does things so that the child stays with that parent and trying to be the good child. It becomes obsessive. The problem, Trisha, is that in the future, when the child becomes an adult, might seek an adult that fits that profile of the parent, who is going to be someone also punitive, someone who thinks they are right and I am wrong and I need to be punished to become a better person. And then I stay with that person and keep on trying to be perfect and conquer that person's appreciation and acceptance. And it's so hard then to leave that person, because this is why we got into that, Trisha.
Right. Yeah, Claudio, I really appreciate how you slow this down and understand what happens in the dynamics of trauma. Is this toxicity doesn't come out of nowhere. It's out of a necessity of learning these skills to survive and have the best relationship you can with your caretaker, with your parent. And I do a lot of individual work. I also obviously do a lot of couples work. And I will say the number one consistent pattern that I see with a lot of clients coming in is there's usually one partner in the relationship or even an individual that comes to me and to share with me, it's my fault. It's my fault. I did something wrong. And the challenge is when their partner who's hurting them in very painful ways, that doesn't give space for the other individual to really be seen, doesn't give space to validate their pain and hurt. And often in the blame game, as I really name this, there is a denial of what's happening inside of them when they're needing safety in a relationship where they want to have validation that their feelings, their experience matters equally. There is this control of the narrative of you hurt me, so therefore I'm right and you are wrong. And so
Yeah.
then there is that dynamic of taking the blame and saying, it's my fault, Trish. That's why I'm in therapy. And there is an idolization of this person has the right answers, Trish. So to help me to be the partner that they need me to be. I mean, that's usually in the first stage when someone individually comes to me and says, I'm doing a lot of wrong. So tell me what I can do better. And then as the therapist, when I'm hearing this, just as if I saw the child, I'd be like, your role as a kid is to be a kid. Your role as a partner is to be a peer, that what you're going through and experiencing needs to be understood and taken seriously, that if you're hurting, your pain hurts as equally as the pain that your partner is presenting to you. But often it's very lopsided, is the weight and the burden is, I don't get to have a voice in this. And that's where it really starts to get toxic. And lately I've been hearing the word abusive a lot, as clients will say, is sometimes in this, I feel guilty, Trish, even saying that this feels abusive when clearly I'm the one who's causing them pain. So help me change, help me do better, help me see my ways. And then I have to tell them what you're doing saying, I don't see as abusive. I actually am going to challenge you to say, what if I was to tell you that what's happening in here is toxic and you are getting expected to do the impossible, is to try to fix something that is not your responsibility to fix. And in fact, I'm hearing your partner who would benefit from couples therapy if they're doing individual work, or if I'm in couples therapy work, I'll often try to slow it down and get really curious to the one that says it's my fault. This would be so much easier if we focus on me being perfect. If I was just the perfect partner, then all of this would go away and they would be happy. And then I can't help but see the small child that's in front of me that's really wounded, to say all these years, ever since I was little, I was expected to make everyone happy and to take on the burden and the responsibility of caretaking for the caretaker.
Yeah, very well explained, Trisha. So we see that how I said, like, the low self-esteem that was caused in childhood
Yes.
by a parent who was very blaming, punitive, and how this person really absorbed and believed that, yes, I am a bad and I need to change and I deserve the punishment. And it becomes confusing. And on the other hand, there is also a side of this person that tells themselves, but there are so many things, so many good things I do. My partner never tells me about those things. My
Mhm.
partner is only telling me about the bad. And
Yes.
also, I am
Yes.
making such a big effort to change, and I have changed a lot. But it seems like in my partner's mind, I'm still bad. I didn't change at all. Because the thing is that, as I was saying, from the point of view of the blaming person, the person who punishes, this person has difficulty believing that they are loved. So they have a thought that the other person doesn't love them, the other person wants to hurt them. So they are hyper vigilant and they are seeing signs everywhere that they are not important, that they are not being cherished. And what happens also, Trish, is that sometimes it's unconscious. It happens in an unconscious level. They also don't want to see the good in the other person.
Yes.
They have a need to think that they are victims because in being victims, they are good and the other person is bad. And there's a need of competition because in their childhood, they felt put down. So, and they now want to say, I am good, you are the bad one. So then they have a need to find fault with the other person.
Yeah.
And I have seen in my, like when I am helping couples, even comes to memory, like a couple here that, when someone is saying about his or her hurt, what the other person is doing, how they are feeling so hurt. The other person wants so much to come in, defend themselves, and say
Yes.
he or she is the bad one. It's so hard for that person to see that they did something. There is a need so intense to protect themselves. So I have heard, for example, a client that when he would say something about his suffering, about what the wife did, and that when his therapist was showing compassion to him in therapy, the wife was so afraid that the therapist was taking the side, and then
Yes.
she would blow like in anger
Right.
and defend herself and put this person down.
Yeah.
So we see like how hard, how difficult this dynamic is, Trisha. But I see that
Yeah.
we have already kind of talked a lot here, and we are gonna have to continue in our next edition of this because it has a lot to understand about this topic, right?
Yeah, I know, Claudio. This is such a topic that has affected my life personally. I've been in these toxic relationships, and that's why we're here, is to thrive our love, is to say, how do we understand it so we can do something different and be really intentional that there is repair, there is healing from it. But we also want to really slow it down to say, how do we make sense of it? And I think we really had a good start to that, and we will continue in our next episodes. We do encourage everyone to tune in to have a better awareness of not only what's going on, but what to do once you understand what's going on and what kind of support you can receive to do something differently that can be healing. So thanks everyone for joining us today. We can't wait to have you back again on Thriving Your Love. Thank you so much for tuning in with us today. We hope you'll join us soon again for our next episode of Thriving Your Love.